Starlight Keep HFY presents Humans Meet the Puffers. Humans Meet the Puffers. Chapter 1. The Puffernib was, by all accounts, a cosmic punchline. In the vast tapestry of galactic biodiversity, this pastel-colored, balloon-shaped creature occupied a thread so thin it might as well have been transparent. Resembling a mix between a stress ball and a poorly inflated party favor, Puffernibs were small, squishy, and utterly incapable of contributing to society. They hailed from Ornac Prime, a planet the Othrax Empire had colonized centuries ago, not out of necessity or strategic value, but because the planet's rulers refused to stop broadcasting their love for interstellar karaoke, a cultural offense the Othrax could not forgive. As far as the conquerors were concerned, the Puffernibs were just another annoying native feature, like poisonous mushrooms or weather that ignored climate regulation laws. For generations, the Othrax tried to find some use for the creatures. Labor? Impossible. They could barely drag their own tails, let alone carry anything. Combat? Laughable. When threatened, they inflated to twice their size and floated away. Even as food, Puffernibs disappointed. Their meat was rubbery and apparently tasted like sour socks dipped in disappointment.
They're cute, though,
one exasperated Othrax scientist admitted during a meeting on their potential applications.
Surely that's worth something.
It was not. Eventually, the Puffernibs became a symbol of the Othrax Empire's failures, and their leaders grew tired of their continued existence. They needed a way out, and the recent armistice with humanity provided the perfect opportunity. Chapter 2. The negotiations took place aboard the UTS Resolute, a massive human diplomatic ship currently parked near Othrax-controlled space. On one side of the table sat Captain Mallory, a weathered diplomat with the build of a linebacker and a face that looked like it had seen every bad decision humanity ever made. Across from him was the Othrax delegation, led by High Minister Gralvax, whose body shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that shifted uncomfortably whenever he spoke.
"We come bearing a gift,"
Gralvax announced, his voice crackling through the translator,
"as a gesture of goodwill and reparations."
Mallory leaned back in his chair, arms crossed.
"That's so. What's the catch?"
"No catch,"
Gralvax said quickly, too quickly. The glowing spots on his face flashed in an erratic pattern that Mallory's aide scribbled down as possible liar.
"We simply wish to offer you a species native to our territory, a companion creature for your colonies, prized for its charm."
Companion creature?
Mallory raised an eyebrow.
You mean like a dog or a cat?
"Yes,"
Gralvax said, a bit too eagerly.
"precisely like that, but better, far better."
Behind the Othrax minister, another delegate coughed suspiciously into their hand, muttering something about unfortunate dietary needs. Mallory squinted at the hologram of the creature now spinning above the table. It looked like an animated plush toy had rolled through a cotton candy machine.
And you're just giving them to us out of the kindness of your alien hearts?
"Indeed,"
Gralvax replied.
"a symbol of trust, cooperation."
Mallory leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Gralvax.
You sure this isn't a prank?
The Othrax delegation collectively stiffened. We do not engage in pranks. Chapter 3. When the first shipment of Puffernibs arrived on Earth, Dr. Darcy Harding was waiting on the tarmac, clipboard in hand and a grin on her face. A xenobiologist with a flair for optimism, Darcy found joy in studying even the galaxy's most overlooked species. She had heard the rumors about Puffernibs, harmless, useless, dumb as rocks, but she was determined to find some spark of value in them.
Ready, Doc?
Captain Mallory asked as he stepped off the ship, his cigar clamped firmly between his teeth.
As I'll ever be.
Darcy replied, adjusting her glasses. The cargo bay opened with a hiss, and the first crate emerged, hovering on an anti-grav lift. A soft pastel glow seeped through its ventilation slats. When the crate touched the ground, the technicians cautiously unlatched it. Population. The lid flew off, and a swarm of Puffernibs spilled out like balloons at a child's birthday party. They immediately began inflating, their tiny legs paddling in midair as they floated away. Mallory blinked.
Well, that's something.
Don't just stand there.
Darcy yelled, already scrambling to grab a net.
Catch them before they,
Too late. One particularly round puffer had drifted too close to a nearby utility drone, its squeaky body sucked into the whirring machinery. There was a horrifying thwomp followed by a mechanical wheeze as the drone sputtered to a stop.
Scratch one drone,
Mallory muttered.
Hope you brought spares, Doc.
Darcy glared at him, breathless from chasing down 3 puffers.
Could you try being less unhelpful?
Sure,
Mallory said, smirking.
right after they stopped trying to hug my boots.
Sure enough, one of the creatures had waddled over to Mallory and was nuzzling his leg, leaving a streak of some glittery substance behind.
Gross,
He said, shaking it off.
You owe me a new pair of boots.
They're trying to bond with you.
Darcy said defensively.
Yeah? Well, they can bond with a mop next time.
Chapter 4. Over the next few days, Darcy and her team worked tirelessly to wrangle the Puffernibs into a temporary research facility. It wasn't easy. The creatures seemed determined to undermine every system of order humanity tried to impose. One morning, Darcy walked into the lab to find a puffer stuck inside a beaker, its body compressed into an hourglass shape.
How did...
She began, then shook her head.
Never mind.
Another time, a technician found a puffer floating near the ceiling, nibbling on the insulation of an air vent.
I think it's eating the facility,
She reported.
They don't eat insulation.
Darcy said, rolling her eyes. She pointed to the puffer.
Then why is it smiling?
Despite their antics, Darcy couldn't help but adore them. She spent hours documenting their behavior, from their bizarre dietary preferences to their habit of inflating whenever startled. Mallory, on the other hand, was less enthusiastic.
They're basically space pigeons.
He grumbled during one of Darcy's briefings.
Cute, but useless.
They're not useless.
Darcy insisted.
We just haven't figured them out yet.
Uh-huh.
Mallory leaned back in his chair, puffing on his cigar.
Let me know when they cure cancer or invent faster-than-light travel.
Chapter 5. One evening, while reviewing cargo logs, Mallory's aide stumbled across something curious: encrypted Othrax documents buried in the shipment's metadata. With a bit of elbow grease and some highly questionable software, he cracked the files.
What the hell is this?
Mallory muttered, skimming the translated text. The documents outlined the Othrax Empire's real plan: dump the Puffernibs on Earth and let their high-maintenance diet and chaotic behavior drain human resources. The phrase, economic sabotage, appeared more than once. Mallory sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose.
I knew those glowing idiots were up to something.
What do we do now?
His aide asked. Mallory lit another cigar, his expression hardening.
We're humans. We adapt. If they want to drown us in fluff, we'll build a damn raft.
Chapter 6. Dr. Darcy Harding leaned over her clipboard, surrounded by Puffernibs in various states of mischief. One was pawing at her shoelaces, another was using its stubby legs to roll a pen across the floor, and a third had somehow inflated itself just enough to get stuck between 2 filing cabinets. Darcy pinched the bridge of her nose.
Okay, team.
She called out to the lab.
Let's regroup. Status report?
Her intern, Lena, shuffled forward, holding a notepad with what looked like bite marks on the edges.
We've managed to tag about 12% of the population.
Just 12%?
Darcy's voice was tight.
What about the rest?
Well,
Lena flipped a page nervously.
several puffers escaped the containment area this morning. One was spotted in the break room eating someone's bagel. Another got stuck in the air duct. Maintenance hasn't gotten it out yet.
And the rest?
Darcy's eyebrow twitched.
They, floated away. Again.
Lena glanced toward the window, where a distant cluster of pastel-colored blobs drifted lazily across the sky. Darcy groaned, dropping into her chair.
At this rate, I'll be tagging Puffernibs until I'm 80.
Captain Mallory sauntered into the lab, cigar in hand, and surveyed the chaos.
You know, Doc, I think they're winning.
Darcy shot him a look.
They're not winning. They're just difficult.
Difficult?
Mallory pointed to a puffer that had managed to wedge itself into a trash can. Its inflated body wiggled uselessly as it tried to escape.
That thing's one bad decision away from suffocating itself. How are they not extinct?
They're adaptable.
Darcy snapped, standing up.
They have quirks we haven't fully explored yet. Did you know their skin can neutralize certain toxic compounds? If we harness that ability, they could be invaluable for environmental cleanup.
Right,
Mallory said, deadpan.
next time I see one of them trying to eat an electrical cable, I'll be sure to thank it for saving the planet.
The chaos wasn't limited to the lab. Outside, the Puffernibs were wreaking havoc on the local ecology. One group had found a patch of moss and was happily devouring it, completely unaware it was part of a carefully maintained ecosystem.
This is bad.
Lena muttered, watching through binoculars.
They're eating endangered moss.
Darcy took the binoculars and examined the scene.
That's not just moss. That's blue fire moss. It's toxic to most species.
Mallory leaned in.
Toxic. They look like they're at an all-you-can-eat buffet.
They must metabolize it differently.
Darcy said, furiously scribbling notes.
This could explain their resilience. Blue fire moss has compounds that...
Mallory held up a hand.
Save the science lecture, Doc. The real question is, can you keep them from eating the rest of it?
Chapter 7. The turning point came at the Intergalactic Biodiversity Exhibition on Mars. Darcy's team had been invited to showcase the Puffernibs in a specially constructed enclosure designed to highlight their unique traits.
This is our chance.
Darcy told her team as they prepared the exhibit.
We need to show the galaxy that the Puffernibs aren't just useless fluffballs. They're survivors. They're adaptable. And they can contribute to ecosystems in ways we haven't even imagined.
Mallory, leaning against the doorway, smirked.
Good luck convincing the galaxy of that.
When the exhibit opened, the Puffernibs immediately drew a crowd. Families pointed and laughed as the creatures waddled around the enclosure, inflating and deflating like living balloons. Children pressed their hands against the glass, mimicking the Puffernibs' squeaky chirps.
They're adorable.
A young mother said, snapping a hollow pic of her daughter posing with one of the creatures.
Adorable but dumb,
Muttered a Zalaxian scholar, his tentacles twitching in disdain.
they have no evolutionary purpose.
Excuse me.
Darcy said, stepping forward.
Did you know that Puffernibs can neutralize toxic gases? Their biology is incredibly unique and could have real-world applications.
The Zalaxian raised an eyebrow.
Neutralize toxic gases? What else? Balance your budget?
Darcy crossed her arms.
They don't need to balance budgets, they just need someone to see their potential.
At that moment, a particularly colorful puffer named Bubblegum waddled up to the glass. Its pastel hues shimmered in the artificial light, and it let out a delighted squeak as it bumped into the glass. The crowd collectively said, "Aw, so cute." The exhibition concluded with the Critter Pageant, a galaxy-wide competition for the cutest and most charming creatures. Against all odds, Bubblegum won first place, beating out several fan-favorite species, including the ever-popular Zifling kittens. The win made headlines across the galaxy. Pictures of Bubblegum wearing its pageant sash were plastered on news feeds, and social media exploded with memes and fan art.
Looks like your little fluff balls are famous now,
Mallory said, tossing a news tablet onto Darcy's desk. Darcy beamed.
I told you they had potential.
Chapter 8. The Puffernibs' newfound fame brought an unexpected visitor to Darcy's lab, an Othrax scientist who had stayed behind after the war.
I am Dr. Zarrock,
He said, his voice crackling through a translator.
I have a confession. I always believed in the Puffernibs.
Darcy raised an eyebrow.
Did you? Your government didn't seem to share your enthusiasm.
Zarrock's bioluminescent patterns dimmed in shame.
The High Council dismissed my research. They saw the Puffernibs as a burden, but I saw their potential. Their biology is remarkable, and their behavior fascinating.
Darcy gestured to a nearby chair.
Tell me more.
Over the next several hours, Zarrock shared his findings. The Puffernibs' resistance to toxins, their unique vocalizations, and their curious social behaviors. Together, he and Darcy brainstormed ways to further study the creatures, forming an unlikely partnership.
You know,
Darcy said, smiling.
if you'd come to us sooner, we might have avoided all this trouble.
Zarrock chuckled.
And if your people hadn't accepted them, the galaxy might never have seen their true worth.
Chapter 9. Years later, Captain Mallory and Dr. Darcy Harding stood on the observation deck of a newly opened Puffernib reserve on Crassier 6C. Below, herds of Puffernibs bounced and waddled across the landscape, their pastel hues blending into the vibrant ecosystem.
Never thought I'd see the day.
Mallory said, puffing on his cigar.
You actually turned them into something useful.
Darcy laughed.
You mean, we turned them into something useful. Admit it, you've grown fond of them.
Mallory grunted.
Maybe. But if one of them nuzzles my boots again, I'm filing a complaint.
Darcy smiled as she watched Bubblegum, now the official mascot of the reserve, float happily among its peers. The Puffernibs were no longer a galactic joke. They were a symbol of resilience, adaptability, and humanity's knack for finding value in the most unexpected places.
Here's to the underdogs.
Darcy said quietly. Mallory nodded.
Here's to the fluff balls.
The end. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. We create stories for you to enjoy here for free, so be a kind, gentle human and subscribe to not miss a single upload. Please consider joining the channel for exclusive content, and we hope you join us again in the next audiobook.